Like, all your smart things are listening to you, and
Don't tell them that.
like they're
Stop it.
collecting that.
You're panic for no reason.
No, I'm just, but that the whole point is not to get like creeped out about it. Like, that's how they collect the data. Like, did it do what you wanted it to do? Did you
With your
ask it?
consent, because you're maybe, in your opinion, maybe not. Sorry, forgot I'm talking with British.
Well, it's like the whole, like, you could say, like, well, like, everyone clicks I accept the terms and conditions and don't read them, right? And you can customize these things in the settings, but like from like a data point of view, like that's how they gather it, right? Like, what are you shaking your?
Be aware and don't just choose. Sometimes I don't mind. I'm like, oh yeah, this website can sell my data. I'm supporting them, and that's my way of supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
Because also, to be fair, I don't go on crazy websites. But no, honestly, like Google Scholar will have my data. They can know what I'm looking for. But on the other hand, there is some websites that I go to for learning purpose, and I don't want them to have my data. It seems shady when I say it like that, so I'm gonna name some websites.
I mean, I wasn't gonna make the joke, but it was there to be made.
I mean, my brain, it sounded shady. But
what
for
you go on the
example,
internet to learn about Auxane is your business, not mine.
And what, for example, an airline company. I just took plane tickets just yesterday, and as much as I support Lufthansa's effort to take me from point A to point B in an hour and a half, I pay them. Therefore, I consider they do not need my data to be sold because I pay them. On the other hand, when I go on the website, it's called Mademoiselle. It's a French feminist journal that has been up for more than 15 years now. And I want them to sell my data because they need that money, and they've taught me an enormous amount over the years. So that's how I personally make my own decisions. And you can, under the GDPR, always refuse for your data to be given and for cookies to be installed. I would also encourage you to, once in a while, once per week is good, even more if you have the time, but just once a week is already nice, to clean your browsers and from cookies, because we don't realize how many cookies are tracking us. And when we say tracking, it's scary, but it's really just knowing on which website you go to know which marketing to give you. But yeah, I just clean them once a week. So, it's just this knowledge that you are able, and it doesn't take me forever. I am not tech savvy at all. The best I can do is use my own computer. I already struggle going on someone else's computer. So there you go.
I think
not tech savvy,
like
doing it.
Again, I wasn't like going down the scaremongering route. I was just saying like that's one of the ways you access data. Like,
yes, it is true. It is
your
true.
AI being able to understand if you asked it to turn the lamp on and it doing that correctly is important because that's how it develops, right? That's what I was trying to get at. But I think like just from like a general point of view, it's like, if I'm legitimately searching for like a shed online, like me then getting an ad for a shed from a company like, we locally install and sell sheds, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's helpful. There is, but it's just the fact that like, there is a lot that is not helpful or annoying.
There is. It's true. And what it made me tick was when you said your devices are listening to you, because there is this enormous conspiracy theory behind Alexa recording everything, because people don't make the difference between listening and recording. Alexa is listening at all time, otherwise it wouldn't be able to answer to you when you call it. And it's the same for if you have Apple softwares or hardwares for Siri.
I mean,
listening is not recording.
I don't want to creep you out though, but like it does record the commands. You can actually go back and like listen to your previous recordings. Like,
yes, and this is for learning purpose, exactly what we're talking about as well, because this is what makes it that maybe next time, Charlie, when you ask your AI something, it will recognize your accent and be able to say this works. There is other ways to do than cloud sharing. But at this point, if we don't do cloud sharing, it will be way harder because each AI will have to be taught instead of teaching each AI once. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also think, like, just to get like maybe a bit more broad again, but like this whole like they're listening and all this, it's like, you know, but do you own a mobile phone? Like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
like the people, like, you know, if the feds wanted to know where you were, they just track your phone. It's not hard. Like,
Do you have Twitter?
yeah,
Did
like,
you know?
do you exist on the internet, like, at all, ever? Not yet. It's been 5 years at this point. All she hears is swear words. That's great.
Well, I'm sorry, Amazon is not doing better. That's funny. That reminds me of a PhD student at the time. I guess he's a doctor now, that I met at a conference a few years back. He was from Scotland and he was studying Alexa's data. So I think I'll just shout him a message and be like, hey, did you look into that by any chance? Does your Alexa understands you? Because he had an accent.
There's big spikes in Scottish swear word. It's coming.
But yeah, so did you know that Twitter data is given is sold, and that's Twitter's business model? So basically, when you tweet something on Twitter, you're putting it on the public domain, most public space possible, unless you make your account private.
Yep.
But I know a lot of people are not aware of that, and thanks to that, we can do research because we get access to, I think, 1% of the Twitter feed for free to research on Twitter data. And this is great for research on Earth observation and stuff like that, behavior observation online. So, but just be aware of it.
A colleague couldn't get a job and then checked his online profile. Once he deleted most of it, he got a job.
Wow. Well, that's part of the recruiting process since Facebook has been up, I guess.
There's that old joke that like your employers will look at your Facebook profile and stuff, isn't it?
Not even sure it's a joke though.
Well, no, but it's just like don't have all your photos of your wild parties, you know.
Just don't put it out on internet, please. Anything you don't want your parents to see, don't put it on the internet. That's the rule.
I saw a really, really funny, and it was like, I think it was way back, even in like, it might have been like guidance that was sent to schools, right? But it was like, don't send a picture on the internet that you wouldn't want passed round the dinner table. And then the next line in this guidance was, what would Granny think?
But this is, you know what? What would Granny think? The new motto when you put stuff on the internet. You know, my parents are on all my social media. So I've been monitored. All of them.
Nothing to say. No, you don't want your parents, your granny.
Yeah, all my social media. It keeps me in check.
It keeps me in check.
I mean, I don't do wild stuff.
I mean, I was gonna say, do you want to be posting like strange things?
Not now, but when I was 16, for example.
Okay, fair. I mean, you know, I've done a few social media cleanses. I used to be quite the potty mouth on Twitter, you know.
Oh, no way.
Oh yeah.
Were you a troll?
No, not a troll. I'd just be like, oh yeah, these mad, like, you know, when you just bump into someone and they're just an absolute C, you know, and just like, like, are you effing having me off? This is utter, BS. Like, you know, just I used to run my mouth off, like.
Chris, what would your parents say? What would your granny say?
I mean, she'd probably tell me I wasn't using the swear words properly, like.
Okay, well, that's another problem.
It's a very there's image, right? That's a thing. The whole parasocial nature of online, but like just from like a language point of view, and it goes against the grain of the stream really, because I like to make the stream, generally speaking, family friendly. Exceptions, available. But like, I swear like an absolute docker off stream. Like I am such a foul mouthed individual. Like it's like an effort for me to not swear. Like I'd be like teaching a class, like keep it clean. Like don't that one email and I could be in trouble. Like don't if I'm just like talking to peeps, I'm like swearing all the time. Like I'm foul mouthed individual.
I'm the same. When I started speaking English on an everyday basis, it was really hard for me because in French we have a florilege of words that are swear words to talk about everything. It is an amazing language. And so when I started speaking English, I didn't have that variety in my language. And the joke was, apologies, that I was calling everyone and everything a bitch.
Because that was like all the vocabulary you had, yeah.
Yes. And it turned into having just different ways of saying it, but basically same word, really. So now when I work, I try to not have exactly this as with my students either, even though my students are basically my age or older than me. So, they wouldn't be shocked. But just because we're in a context where we have to keep a minimum formal. But it still happens sometimes, not with my supervisor, though. I have to say I'm being quite good with that. But it does happen sometimes that I drop a few swearings here and there. In the private, though, terrible.
I always kind of, Charlie makes a good point. It's good to be able to swear in another language if other people don't know it, and you just say it with a smile on your face. That's a pro move.
This is what I ended up doing at some point. Also because everyone was just being mean with accentuating their own accent, so I would insult them in French and be like, "Ha, you feel dumb now. I don't understand, but you don't understand me either." So yeah.
The reason I it's no secret that I love words. I love words. I love language. I think it's fun. I think it's great. I love using a whole plethora of words for different things. Because language is stupid, so we have loads of different words for the same thing. And I kind of like swearing because it's like that extremity, like something is taken like that far. Like let's not turn it into a blue stream or anything, but like the F word just has so many contexts. You can use it in so many different ways. It can be like the best and worst thing at the same time, and that I just think is fabulous. Don't weaponize it. Don't call people things like that's not cool. But just the fact that words can be used in that way, and like swearing is like that extremity.
It shows more emotion through words.
It's a sentence enhancer, like adding paprika to food. Yes, Charlie knows what's what.
I'm gonna quote you on that if ever someone tells me something about my swearing.
I'm gonna like make that a channel quote on the stream. Swearing, it's a sentence enhancer, like adding paprika to food. That is.
Can we make a T-shirt and a mug?
Yes. Yeah, it says that on one side, and then a swear word of your choice on the other.
Yes. It's a brand now. You can get your royalties, Charlie. We swear.
Hey.
Made a pun. Amazing. The day it just adds a certain spice. Yes. The day I started doing puns in another language, that's the day I knew.
That's the day.
I know I made it. I made it.
You made it. Nice.
I made a pun. I was like, "Oh, have you seen what I did?" And going back to AI, have you ever seen an AI make a pun?
No.
Yeah, that's how much they understand language. There you go. They're basically level A2. They don't get it. They just put words one after the other. That's it.
Sorry, we fell down the biggest yes. There. I don't even know what we were talking about.
Okay.
Also, the thing to point out there is, and Charlie's like Siri can. I'm like, okay, but is that like it actually delivering a pun within context, or is that just pulling a pun off the internet? Because there's a difference.
Because I can ask. Wait a second. We're gonna ask Alexa for a pun.
Oh, it's happening live. Let's go.
Hey Alexa, can you make a pun, please?
What do you call it when bumblebees line up for a drink? Barbecuing.
Did you get it? This is a new ability Alexa had for like the past 2-3 weeks. Oh my gosh, I want to try that. Hey Alexa, can you beatbox, please?
I don't know that.
Hey Alexa, can you do beatboxing?
Chicken.
Alexa dropping the sick beats.
Hey Alexa, Thank you.
You bet.
You
No, Alexa, stop, please. Alexa, stop, please. Thank you. Still doesn't get it. When you see the limitations, if you say thank you to someone on that tone, they would stop. They would know it's like, okay.
Thank you. Okay.
But yeah, so it cannot generate puns on its own on purpose inside a conversation. But it can learn puns.
Boots and cats over and over. like that scene in Step Brothers, like.
But if we go back to Detroit, right? So because it all
Put your
started
hands
with...
up for Detroit.
So we've been talking about accessibility. Basically, that's what it is about. And here is a big word of ethics. I mean, accessibility is a big topic in ethics. I can name really quickly other stuff coming with accessibility. We don't have to discuss them. It's not necessary. Yes, and we will get back to that, Charlie, in a second. That is a really good point as well.
That's one of those that, like, think of the children. They're just going to be barking orders. They won't understand manners.
Alexa Kids. There is an Alexa Kids, and it asks you. No, Alexa. Merci. Dodo. Yeah, okay, sorry. Now that I spoke to it once, it's just going to think I want to hang out with it.
Alexa's like ordering you kids now.
But yeah, so kids exists, and it has a setup for that. It has a setting for politeness, basically.
Yes, because adults, you can be rude. You're an adult.
Exactly. That is also a point I want to get to. So when we talk about accessibility really quickly, we can also talk about financial accessibility, the big questions of environmental impact. And this is more about justice and how the rich countries are going to develop and use those. The poor countries might buy them, but they won't be adapted, therefore less accessible. Talking about language, of course, but talking about also just the needs that are different. And a final point, more than economy, will be culture. Culture is really different. I have a student that just right now is doing his thesis on perception of I'm really not aware of my student's thesis. That's right. He's doing on healthcare robots and perception of decision making according to the culture, and basically the decision to use it or not, depending on which culture the people are from. And he's comparing North African cultures with elderly care and European cultures, which is super interesting, right? Because this is exactly what we're talking about here, the idea that it's not maybe needed, nor accessible, nor accepted. Now, going on maybe more exciting topics, because this is this is not so exciting.
I mean, you don't think the whole conversation hasn't been exciting? Like,
I think everything has been super exciting. And honestly, ethics of robots, whatever the take, is exciting to me. So, blah, blah, teaching, yes and no. Yeah, that's what we wanted to go back to. That's also a question of culture, right? I have learned by living with an Icelandic person that in Iceland, they do not say please or thank you. And it's not part of their language to have something like that. I'm on the edge of my seat. Thank you. And they don't have that in their language, which created, we lived together, so it created a bit of problems coming from a culture where politeness, and I was living with Germans at the time as well, so you can imagine like the Germans are almost too polite for their own good, culturally speaking. And in France, we still have etiquette. And it created a lot of tension where it was not necessary, because one day we sat down and we're like, you need to be polite. That's it. And she was like, what do you mean? And like, well, say please and thank you. And she said, oh, I'm sorry. We don't have those words, so I never use them. Wow. Wow.
I know,
So
like speaking of politeness, I remember someone saying in a lecture once, but I think it's like I'm going to be broad speaking because I can't think of the exact one, but like in like a Scandinavian culture, there's the idiom that like it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
you wouldn't like there's the very British thing of like you knock on a door before entering. You know, you inquire as if someone is decent if you're entering a bedroom before entering. You would never dream of just walking into someone's private bedchambers. Or dastardly, like you might see them in the nude, or a state that is somewhat debaucherous. You know, like that kind of like attitude of like you know, that type of business.
Yeah. But this is fascinating.
Yeah.
How do you translate that, you know?
I mean, you don't use like English as a blueprint. We're awful. But that plays into like cultural stereotype that our standards of politeness. I mean, like again saying this like, you know, just for a polarizing example, there's that kind of idea of Britishness, but then also, you know, football hooliganism is quintessentially British. So, you know, things exist on a spectrum.
Okay, that was the point you were making. But yeah, so if you talk about implementing technologies that will be in homes and you aim at having them around the world, or at least around even just different states of the US, because wild guess, US will be part of the first to implement stuff at home like that, even more than anywhere else, right? Not so wild. Even in between different states, you will have different standards. Standards is a great word to use. Just in the south of the US, you have the stereotype that everyone is too polite. They're fake polite. And that you have some states where Alabama, if that rings anyone's bell.
If they can make money on it, yes, US will implement it quickly. From a Texan native.
Yeah. Oh, are you Texan? Well, there you go. That's funny. I know a lot of Texans that end up not liking the US so much.
I have one of my sound commands in chat is exclamation mark yeehaw. After reading about the great state of Texas.
Yeehaw. Let me try it.
Oh wait, no, hold on. So I'll drop it for you. So it's exclamation mark. Yeehaw! It's the haw. There it is.
Ah.
That's a beautiful sound bite.
Amazing.
But it's the haw. Sorry, random Texas tangent.
But yeah, and so we end up having already this question for internal to a country. It is an enormous country. We're all aware. So big, so many different cultures already inside communities. A lot of bias, a lot of communities with more or less social directions, if we can say. So you cannot expect the same expectations, really, or the same standard expectations from one country to the other. And from one state to the other. So then if you even want to implement that in Europe, oh my gosh, I'm not even talking about the regulations around those AI, but just the AI itself culturally.
They would have
I can't wait.
a field day.
Yeah. But there is a few social robots already implemented here and there and stuff, but
well, I mean, you know, Bob's making another point. Even in the same state themselves, there are huge divides because there are just, and this might shock some people, but personal opinions.
No way.
Such as, and pulling one out of thin air, you know, that cats are loyal but dogs aren't. People have really wild indicative opinions of themselves, you know, for no apparent reason, with no evidence or scientific justification, for example. Like...
Okay, I see what you mean. I see your point.
Sorry, I'm just still a bit sore about the, you know, the I'm a horrible person kind of shade I got earlier on.
That was a joke. I didn't mean it.
Who would say such a thing exactly? Like, you know.
I didn't mean it.
So good.
After that, I said that you were a good person and that you were researching good stuff.
That's also true. Fair. See, I told you I was a horrible person though, so warned, I guess. It's all good. It's all shits and gigs. Till someone giggles and shits.
I'm gonna hear about that 10 years from now. I'm sure I'll receive a text out of the blue. By the way, I'm not a horrible person.
I mean, I said the same thing after I did that final level on Detroit, so
yeah, true. But yeah, your decision. We'll get back to your decision of bombing everyone. Just because I have a question about
there will be a paper on it.
The thought process there. There will be a paper on it. Yes. So now that we've talked about accessibility and all that, and we all agree that this would be a bit crazy to imagine that those tech would be so widely adopted directly if there is no adaptation to personal need, linking to the problematic of sharing data and the, in my opinion, positive problematic of GDPR that is there to protect your personal data and especially your consent in sharing those. Do we really think that we will get there in the next 20 years? We will get to having, they don't have to be humanoid, because honestly, I don't think humanoid robots will work that well. Not yet. Anyway.
I've read enough dystopian to know that, like, if that's what the powers that be want, that's what they'll make happen. I know, again, that's like so negative and so cynical, but like, you know, some things that people want, people make happen regardless of whether it should or not. Like,
I have data that can counter that.
Okay, all right. I was just like, I think when you think about how rapidly things move, it's like, wouldn't be disappointed but not surprised. Put it that way. Like,
the fact that it could happen really quickly, I fully agree with you. But I have seen a lot of startups. I don't remember the data exactly, but there was like 70% of the social robot startup that opened in 2018, between 2018 and 2020, something like that, failed miserably. They had a hype when they opened and then they failed. Whatever the robot looked like. Because the robot was not adapted enough to the people and was not improving enough. So it was not about the design, though. On that, you're right. It was about the robot itself and its ability, not evolving. But
I mean, the other thing you could say is like maybe it might happen, but as we kind of pointed out, like in geographical pockets, like it would just be.
I would believe that.
Like you know, in capital cities, for example, where there is a higher level of affluence and more concentrated elements of people developing those type of things. Like
wild guess again. Japan.
Well,
100% Japan. This culture, and I'm going to put the Chinese in there as well when it comes to what I'm about to talk about, have a thing for virtual partners, literally AI girlfriends and boyfriends. I can imagine really easily that they would make them into robots. And I know, I don't remember which company it is, I think it's in China, that they are willing to create a robot wife.
South Korea too, apparently.
Yes. There are a lot to have failed because they weren't ready to launch, but pushed just to be the first. That is entirely possible. There's also a big problem of updates and how long it takes to get an update that adapts the AI. And it was in the US, so you don't have all the questions of data privacy. So it was not about the data. It was really about not being quick enough on their feet. You're right.
And when you think about how long it takes to like update your phone already, like, sweet Lord.
Yeah.
Let alone something a bit more complicated.
But yeah, so they have this culture of virtual girlfriends and boyfriends that they would rather, there has been a few studies on that in Japan, if they would rather have a real partner and share a home. And the answer is no for a lot of them. for the ones using those virtual girlfriends, obviously.
I
But the
laugh,
answer
but
is
that was just like a British kind of. I don't know what to make of that kind of
yes.
thing. Like, that's a hot take. I mean, people are difficult and challenging. I can understand and completely see the merit of not having to deal with other people, because I experience
Also
that on a
comes
daily
from the
basis.
culture.
But also informed by culture, I guess. Yeah.
But yeah, in those cultures, they usually have a high standard. So there's still a lot of the man needs to put the food on the table and the woman needs to be the household maker. And the problem is that if you don't want to kill yourself at work, because again, in those countries, the culture of work is a bit different than in ours. Mental health, I'm not even sure they started talking about it at this point.
So Charlie's just said
yeah.
that they recently watched a documentary on this, and the reason was that I can get what I want without the expense and emotional cost, like
exactly.
Which again is one of those arguments that I find is really interesting, because like you're trivializing and transactionalizing like the human experience, like, and sort of like
yes.
reducing that down. I'm like love and romance wouldn't be incredibly complicated and fascinating, like we wouldn't have half the music we do if love didn't make any sense, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and what a loss to the world that would be.
Yes, but in those cultures, I'm wondering how they perceive love.
Well,
because
I mean,
it's also about
it's
a question,
construct, right? So
exactly, it is emotions, and it comes from somewhere, and there is hormones involved, and there is a full science, neuroscience of love.
Mhm.
So it is not out of thin air. We didn't convince ourselves that it was something. There is something. There is a chemical connection happening, and therefore electrical connection.
Yeah.
And therefore,
not quantifiable. I agree.
Yeah. So the question is more where society puts love as a norm and as a priority. And there is in those societies, like we used to hear, but it's a bit different because different cultures, evolution, still a lot of arranged marriage based on, yes, of course, maybe a bit of love, but also a lot of
status and acquisition.
Yes. I mean, if you look into India, there is no more rank. Don't know the term in English. Caste. Class, yeah. But they had official class, right? Just like less than 20 years ago. Not on a numerical scale. True. I mean, who could quantify love? There's such a personal thing. But in India, you wouldn't marry outside your caste, for example. Mm-hmm. And this is something, even though you were in love, that's not the question. And there is still already today a lot of people that choose arranged marriage because also it's not forced marriage. I'm talking about arranged marriage. It's really different. People date and decide to marry from both sides. No one is forced.
Yeah, one of my friends is he's from India, and he's actually like giving me a bit of perspective on this. Like, yeah, it is like it's more like he kind of jokingly sort of says like his mum will sort of send him like CVs of potential dates, like is doing sort of the Tinder work for him. And it's like, yeah,
exactly.
like, oh, like, well, we know them, we know their parents to be a great match. Like, it's slightly less like, yeah, it's not quite false. It's definitely strong armed, I guess. Like, it's like, I've got this great selection of CVs for you. You should take a look at them. Definitely go on these dates, kind of thing. But like, less about like, you will do this kind of thing.
And I think we have a mythology also in Europe, and again, wild opinion here, a full mythology around romanticism. And I'm French, I can speak about that. It's literally romantique is a thing for us. You have romantic things, you have romantic moments, you have romantic people, you have romantic behaviors, you have romantic everything. You have everything. A smell can be romantic. A color can be romantic. And this romance needs to come naturally, and you need to fight for it. because we fight for what we believe in and we believe in love. And so there is a full thing around fighting for love. And I mean, Romeo and Juliet is still, to this day, one of the most renowned pieces of Shakespeare for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's known around the globe. It has been taken in multiple cultures under different names, but same story. People fight for love and they fell in love when they shouldn't have. And this is a perception of love that, in my opinion, is really Western, because we have this culture of freedom when it comes to relationship as well.
I also
Now,
think that it's really problematic. It's a really problematic perspective of romance. Like,
you can go as far as that. You can go less far than that, of course. And I think a lot of people after 20 realize that love might not just be what they thought it was in the movies.
I mean,
Look at
like,
a movie.
just think about how Romeo and Juliet ended. Like, that's not what anyone wants. Like,
Excuse me, I'm
no
French.
spoilers.
Romantic.
Yes, we both end up in a heap. Beautiful.
No, but you know what I mean. It's look at a Marvel, a DC movie, blockbuster movie.
We're going
James Bond.
We're going off big tangent here, but like,
true.
I listened to a 3-part series, 3-part podcast episodes. Malcolm Gladwell's podcast that's name has just gone out my head. Revisionist History. There we go. And like they deconstruct why The Little Mermaid is really bad and all the issues in it, and like actually really deconstruct it, and they rewrite the ending.
You can do that with so many Disney movies,
and like it all roots down to like actually the fairy tale. So there, to be like really like TLDR kind of thing, that like when you have this kind of manipulation, and it isn't manipulation because a lot of fairy tales like. Bad things happen to good people. Bad things happen to everyone. Good things happen to everyone. Like, it's a very kind of less warped perception. Whereas this, you get a generation of people, several generations, and you tell them things like, well, good things only happen to good people, and bad things only happen to the bad people. You will have people who then experience bad things and internalize that and go, I must be the bad person then. And like, that's why this whole thing is like a bit yikes.
It is, and
they also tend to be very binary, good versus bad, etc.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the world is not that clear cut.
No, come work in ethics. Basically, everything is gray. I can justify everything with good or bad faith. I mean, but I can justify every behavior.
Everything in psychology is pretty gray too.
Yes, and that's why psychologists and ethics work really well together.
Gray matter. Did you get it, eh?
Oh my gosh, I didn't get it. It's even worse now that you say it.
Was that a pun? Did you laugh, Bob? Did you laugh? Because if you did, yes. If you didn't, no, it's facts.
But yeah, so
I was about to quote Hercule Poirot and then do a really bad French accent, and I didn't want to.
Please do it.
The little grey cells, mon ami.
That was not so bad. It would sound like the little grey cells, mon ami.
Ah, there it is. Let's go.
It's super colorful in game research. Yeah. There you go. But yeah, so at the end of the day, what we were talking about is also the relationship to love and perception of love, and basically romantic relationships and robots. If we think about that, I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's almost 10 p.m. your time, so it's PG-13, so that works. We're going to talk about sex robots and relationship robots. And now, what do you think about a cyborg?
Suddenly the viewer count has just shut off. The mention of sex robots. Like, I use that as the ad for the podcast episode, and everyone loves it.
No way.
No, I'm joking.
That would be hilarious, because
your episode is known as like the one with the sex robots in. That's it's funny.
Yeah, well, we talked about prostitution for a good 10 minutes on there.
Yeah. Facts.
How much is projection as well? Yes, because especially when we talk about robots, I mean, most of it, if not all of it. Are you doing a content warning?
No, I was just dropping a link to the podcast.
Cool.
You know, I mean, we've tread. Yeah, ironically, I was going to say we have not tread a lot of the same ground because the podcast was actually quite structured.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, but we decided that this wouldn't be. So
yeah, exactly.
It was going to be a conversation with people that can join us in the conversation if they want to. That's about it. But yeah, and so when you talk about having a love affair, because that's a big question, what a lot of the fear linked to sex robots is that it's going to create a new paraphilia, that it's going to tend to have people, and when they say people, they think of a big number of people, seriously, preferring to have sexual robots than partners, kind of disregarding, in my opinion, the entire thing of a human in front of you that makes a relationship both ways, with the good and the bad. But yeah, so that's the big fear. And what I appreciated in Detroit is that they did not put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have like a main character that had one partner that was just a robot and that's it, because they love to have power over it. I'll give you my opinion. I gave a bit of my opinion away already, but I'll give you more of my opinion on possible paraphilia and the spreading of it later, but I want to hear yours first.
I think so. Firstly, like I again, it's like that kind of dystopian thing of it will lead to population downfall. People will only want to sleep with robots and not each other because of the benefits and stuff. And like it's literally like a Futurama episode, I think. Like a big like joke out of it. Like I kind of get that. For me, I think the kind of people that go down that track are kind of like they forget that, you know, sex toys kind of already exist. Like, and kind of have. I mean, I've been to the sex toy museum in Amsterdam, like, and they've existed for a long time. Like, people have found ways to, we used the term personal servicing before, personally service themselves without the need of another person for quite a long time. And that's some people's preference. There are some people whose preference is for no personal servicing whatsoever. And that's completely cool, completely up to them. That's fine. So I think it's just kind of like it's just another one of them. You know, like it's just another thing to be. I mean, you referenced a piece of research where nearly 40% were like couples that wanted to use a robot.
Yeah, and this is also something that we forget an enormous amount when it comes to sexuality.
Just want to jump in that Charlie pointed out Ann Summers names all of their lady pleasuring products, like, you know, gives them names, makes them not just, you know, just objects kind of thing.
I love the idea. Can we do it? A museum about that? Like, because that is full personification of an object.
Yeah.
Maybe they have stories and all. That would be hilarious, though. I can imagine like
it comes with a backstory, like a little leaflet.
Yeah. But I can definitely imagine.
So I have heard. Charlie is pointing out. Yeah.
I can imagine like a full thing, a full business that runs on the fact that, yes, it's sex toys like you can find in other places, except because you're making them more human-like by giving them a backstory and giving them a name, it would work better because people might feel more comfortable using them. That is hilarious. Such a great idea. Anyway, sorry. Forgot.
So the study where 40% couples wanted to use.
Yes. Yeah. So the fact that when we talk about sex toys, people directly, whether it is for female or for male, they'll think of that lonely human that needs sexual stimuli, and that's it. I know, thanks to one of my students that did a full presentation on this, that a lot of the market is not about lonely people at all. A lot of the market is about first same gender people, or let's say queer relationships, so that we include everyone in there. There is also a lot of heterosexual couples that want to explore things. And then you will have the lonely people, but also there is a healthiness to being in a couple and
Couples
still
play as well,
yeah.
as Charlie's put it.
Exactly. And there is a full part of healthiness that I think is disregarded as soon as we start talking about sexuality, because sexuality is kind of a taboo.
Well, I was just about to say, if we wanted to like really break down to the nuts and bolts of it, is the fact that like, you know, in very much, I don't want to sound too broad. I'll just sort of say Britishness just for the sake of what I know. But like this, like, well, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
You know what you do in your private bedchambers is what you do there. You know, like,
yeah.
Imagine justifying your search history for that presentation.
Well, I did a presentation on sex robots and I did erase my search history.
Oh, you didn't keep those cookies? No.
No, I didn't. But yeah, no, but her work was fascinating though. She did a full presentation on sex robots and business from a business perspective and the relevance of it.
But yeah, I mean, so like the thing we were getting at there was that just like this kind of thing isn't discussed, and it's like a very private thing, like, oh, what you get up to is your business, but you wouldn't advertise it anyway. And it kind of like completely disregards the fact that, you know, everyone likes to do stuff in a way that is most entertaining for them, I guess. Like,
and there is no rule. I would also just, for whoever might need to hear that, there is no fucking rules.
Literally, in this case.
Yes, exactly. There is consent.
See,
and
that was a good
respect, but thank you, made it. So, yeah, there is consent and there is respect, and that's about it. And the rest is just up to you, and whether you're alone with someone, with multiple people, who fucking cares?
Charlie,
it's your business.
In COVID times, the disinfecting cost must have been astronomical in terms of sex robots.
This is such a good point. Can you rent sex robots though?
Oh, I mean, that's something you don't want to think about, is it? That's
yeah, but it's like the dolls, you know. I don't know. So I don't know how much you're aware of sex robots, but right now they're basically dolls, and they have just the face moving. So it's not like a big. I know it is weird as hell. It creeps me out.
It's not for me, shall we say? Not for me.
No, honestly, it is uncanny because they are like human-like. And
the funny thing though is, like, again, like the thing that is in my mind is that we talked about it on stream, but like that clip of the robot attempting to show human emotion, and that's what my brain is projecting, like that. Like, oh, isn't that romantic? Like, oh, dysfunctional face movements, like, oh.
Exactly. But let's imagine one day we get to the point of Detroit where you have sex robots that look like North and that are like the most humanoid. Not a question of can you, it's would you even want it? What would they label it? Single use.
Oh no. I mean, pre-owned, pre-loved.
This is
lightly soiled.
We have some strong ideas to sell it to these businesses. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear them. But there is documentaries out there, and there is that one guy that kept like buying over sex robots from other people, and he was like, "Oh, I don't have sex with them," but he had like 500 of them. That's not a joke. That was,
but I'm
special.
Okay, but then what are you doing with them?
He was a collectioner.
I mean, anything else?
Dancing in the documentary, he dances with them, and his wife watches.
Okay.
No judgment.
No judgment. I'm just taking
shame.
I'm just taking a moment to try and physically process that. Tea parties a la Norman Bates. Oh no. Oh no.
Well, that's a great link to sex robots and how they could be used to maybe educate on sexuality, but also maybe be used in therapy.
Sorry,
for the kind.
I apologize.
No worries. Can you show the dog? I mean, it's kind of required at this point. What's its name? Is it Mario? I heard you say Mario earlier.
Here's the boy.
Oh, hi! He's so tiny. He's so cute.
Hello, bud. Hello, yes.
He's got a pullover. Oh,
yeah,
look at that.
It's winter.
Oh, so cute. What's its name?
Mario. As in
So it's
Super
a he?
Mario. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think he needs a toilet though, so I might have to take another wee break, if you will.
Do you want to take a break now?
Yeah, I think he needs out. That's why he's badgering me.
Okay.
So
right.
we'll come back to the previous question in just a moment. Thanks everyone for sticking around. There'll be an ad, etc., etc. Don't go away.
Yeah, we're back in 5.